Hello and welcome to what may be the only GameTales of 2023. Not that last year we had many of them, I think there were two. I am again joined by
Hey.
Steven from the channel, Steven Nonsense. Steven, welcome back to the channel. How have you been?
Welcome, Unicom. So glad we get to do at least one of these a year. It's it's been what it's been, but overall pretty okay.
So Steven, what's the subject of today's video?
The subject of today's video is something that we've had on our list of GameTales subjects for, I'm gonna say, 3 years by now.
Yes.
And we finally got to it. And it is the subject of modern personal, that's under stressing personal classics. What are, in my case, 5 games? I think you might have 5 as well, 5 titles as well. 5 modern titles that we personally that have made it into our own personal classics roster. The only what makes a game modern, in case you're gonna comment that right now, they have to be at maximum around 10ish years old. So like the cutoff point will be 2010, just because we've had this on the list for like 3 years.
So technically, is this the first time we're trying to make this video?
No, I think we did this once. Yeah, no, we did this like we recorded it once.
Well, technically, I forgot to record it, and I don't think your video was working when you tried to record it as well.
A year ago, and it was all kinds of technical issues. Yeah. So it's fine. Doesn't matter. We're doing it live.
Yeah, this is the curse, the Scottish play of GameTales, if you will.
Yeah, but it's only been happening in the behind the scenes. So as far as our viewers are concerned, hey, this is the first one.
Yeah, so let's pretend it's the first time we're doing it. Also, it helps that I absolutely forgot what games I picked last time.
Okay.
So it's for me, it's gonna be like the first time again.
That's great. I have a list. I always have lists, so I know.
Okay, I'm gonna let you start off. What is one of your top 5 personal classics of the last decade or so?
Okay. And I'm gonna start with I'm gonna start cheating. I'm gonna start by cheating with a trilogy, and it is none other than the Shadowrun Returns trilogy.
Excellent choice. Absolutely excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate it a lot. The first one was released in 2013, and the third one being released in 2015. So it fits quite well within the maximum decades old requirement. And why exactly Shadowrun Returns? Well, because first of all, I'm a fan of the setting. Setting is real great and interesting and weird and wacky. And as the games advanced, I still consider Shadowrun Returns, the first one, to be more of a very elaborate tech demo. Everything, definitely. Don't get me wrong, the game is finished and everything works and whatnot. But it feels like a sort of a dry run, because the story itself, while cute and fun, it's your average sort of mystery story, which is cool and great. But then you play Dragonfall,
and it's a completely different level,
and the story is its own thing. It's not like Shadowrun Returns, I think it's kind of like one of those semi-filler episodes in a TV show. It's great, it's good on its own, but it's in between like some really cool arcs, basically. And that's what Dragonfall shows you. Dragonfall has the way I describe it in general is that Dragonfall has the most compelling characters, whilst the third one, Hong Kong, has the most interesting narrative and story. you can argue either or neither, I guess. But within the trilogy, yeah. So that's why you can totally play Shadowrun Returns. There is no issue with it. However, if I were to suggest, I suggest you start with Dragonfall because the mechanics are slightly changed between Returns and Dragonfall. And like I said, the characters and the story, it's a completely different league, let's say. So that's why the Shadowrun trilogy is one of my modern classics, even if in the meanwhile, maybe some other turn-based tactics RPGs have been released that are cool, and I know some others might be on other people's lists, and I've played a fair few of them, although not all. But Shadowrun Returns trilogy is a really solid gameplay experience from both mechanical standpoint as well as the narrative storytelling into it. And the more time, I mean, the games have a lot of side content, not side quests, but just side content. There's storytelling within the world, especially on the Shadowrunner BBS forums, and some of them are really really funny and really amusing. So if you really want to like get immersed in the world, you can do that. If you want to just go through and kick ass and build characters, you can also do that. And that's the sign of a well-designed gameplay experience. So that's my first.
Yeah, I have to totally agree with Shadowrun. The series has been fantastic. As I said, the first one was a more of a tech demo. It was the first one they kickstarted, the first one that Hairbrain made, so it was a learning experience for them as well. One of the things they learned is that people really expected it to be a game where you walk around places, whereas in Returns, once you left an area, you couldn't go back to it. They had to patch in the ability to go back to previous areas, just because people wanted to explore them more. And the subsequent games all had a more open approach. Every hub area, every region that wasn't specifically a combat mission could be revisited, which was really something very, very nice. It's a very, very good world to explore, a very deep world. Very, very good. Also, the character work that they did with Dragonfall was just much better. Like, Glory is still one of the most tragic characters I've seen in an RPG.
I like to use the word compelling, but yeah.
You have to dig a bit deep to get why she's like that. And when you do, it's just heartbreaking. And basically, her entire backstory could have been a game. All that.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember kind of thinking that as well. But hey, it's like as far as that could be also an if you're into the tabletop version. You can always use that as a springboard chance to play within the realm or to use ideas. Always steal.
Yeah, if you're gonna steal ideas for RPGs, steal them from the best games.
Yeah,
you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of them. Shadowrun Returns was the first and only game that I ever did a launch day stream of.
No.
So I bought it the second it came out, and I made a stream on the old channel with it. It was I never done that before and haven't done that since. Not say that because it was a bad experience, but I really don't have the time to do that. I would have actually. I think I should have done that for Dragonfall as well. The only drop I ever had with Dragonfall was that at the ending you're provided with several choices. And one in particular was absent, but they added it in the director's cut. So it's a complete game. You can choose from a whole plethora of ways in which you decide basically the fate of the planet at the end. It's a great game. I liked the Hong Kong as well, maybe not as much. The absolute standout in Hong Kong for me was the what's her name? The one that's the character, the lady that's inspired from Kung Fu Hustle. I forget her name.
I don't know which exactly
The
you're talking about.
the matron. What she gives you some missions. Yeah, she's basically taken out of Kung Fu Hustle from the
kind of.
landlady.
I think that's a sort of a archetypical stereotype. I
Oh,
think that
they specifically. I watched some of the developers. They specifically said that's where they got her from.
yeah, but I also think that type of person actually exists. Like
Oh yeah,
obviously not as exaggerated. But I think it's like unfortunately stereotypes are generally real for a reason, or they
yeah.
work for a reason. Even the same goes for archetypes. Yeah, but I also remember reading some an interesting analysis of Shadowrun Hong Kong from the perspective of someone of Hong Kong. I think they were born there and they lived in that culture, and they explain how how there is small sort of references within the game that told them that the developers actually did a fair bit of research, or maybe they had consultations regarding to the culture in the region. And the thing that I still remember is that it's related to the character you're talking about. The way in which you address her is auntie, and that's a thing, and apparently that's a thing in the local or regional
Yeah,
culture. And
aunties, uncles, neighborhood uncles in general.
so there's also that. Yeah, no, Hong Kong, that's what I say. Like that's why I make the differentiation. Dragonfall has the most compelling characters, but I enjoyed the story in Hong Kong more. I found it more entertaining
Yeah,
in that
it's a city that drains people's luck.
in that sense. I found it so it's really really cool and interesting, and the characters in Hong Kong are super interesting as well. You can also get to know them fairly well. Um, oh yeah, and talking about the cultural differences, this is an assumption I might have, like a theory of mine, is like maybe the reason I prefer Dragonfall is because I'm European and I can better understand. I mean, I understand whenever you talk to Dietrich, for instance, in Dragonfall, you kind of, depending on where you come from, and because where Unicom and I come from, yeah, you kind of maybe knew a Dietrich, or you had Dietrich like acquaintances, or your friends knew something, or there is an urban, not so much myth about people like that. So I think maybe that's also another reason. That's like a cultural bias, maybe. Um, but either way, they're terrific games, and even if you're in it just for the turn-based combat and the character customization, yeah, you can like I made in Hong Kong, I made Wolverine. I got a dwarf with blade implants. Like, you can make that, you can build that. It's actually really cool and fun.
Yeah, it's also a game that a series that offers you a lot of choices, not just in the combat, but in the way you play it. All the interactions that you can have with different characters, the options that you have, to talk to people in the what do you call them, the I forget what they're called,
Oh yeah,
etiquette.
yeah.
You have different types of etiquette that those affect really how you can approach a lot of situations. If you're if you know how to talk like a corporate stooge, you can get into places that wouldn't necessarily be available to you if you're more of a wisecracking street thug, for example.
Well, those places are available, but different areas. You need to go through the ducts
Yeah,
or shoot yourself in, which is never a good idea.
come in shooting and maybe hopefully go out alive. If not,
Yeah,
call the dock wagon.
I
Oh,
don't think there's a dock wagon
no,
in
you,
this
you
one.
just have the tokens, the dock
Yeah,
code.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Anywho,
that's
that's a lot on Shadowrun Returns. I'm
yeah,
glad you enjoyed my choice as well.
yeah. It's games that I absolutely very much loved. And my first pick for personal classic of the last decade is Divinity Original Sin. Stephen, I believe you're going to make some videos about Divinity in the coming year, right?
I think that we can talk about my plans at the end of this video.
I
Uh,
asked
cur-
that.
Currently, it is in the general overall plan, but hell knows what happened. Hell knows if I do get to it this year. But yeah, the plan is to cover Divine Divinity this year.
Have you played the Original Sin up until now?
I have played. I played at release. A bunch of it, but I didn't. I don't know. I think I got maybe halfway through. I don't remember really that well. The kind of like the story plot point where I got to was when the special metal was introduced. At a certain point, there's a special
Oh
metal
yeah, yeah.
introduced,
I remember it. Yeah.
and that's if I remember correctly, that's what I stopped playing.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Divinity Original Sin is the fifth, I believe, or fourth, or no. There's Divine Divinity, Beyond Divinity, Dragon Commander, Divinity 2,
Okay.
and Original Sin. It's the fifth game in the Divinity franchise slash series, and it's probably the best one they've made. I mean, up until the Original Sin 2, which I haven't played a lot of, but people say that it's also probably better. But to me, Original Sin is a nicer game because it feels more like one of the traditional role playing games that well I used to play, in the sense that you have two characters. You create two characters. They're the core of your party. You can get a bunch of other characters as well, and you can talk to them. They have side quests, they have dialogue, but you always have these two
Mm.
characters. And you can get them to talk to each other and disagree with each other. I've been doing that in my head for 30 years with all sorts of games. I always get my characters, the ones that don't talk to each other, to talk to them in my head. And they made that into the game as a mechanic, as an important mechanic, actually.
Yeah, it's like a what was it? It's like a clash. It's like a character clash mechanic, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting because like the even though you in this meta way you're the one making the decisions, it also imparts this sort of weird agency on the side of the actual game. Like the characters you play as occasionally kind of screw you over, but it's not like it's not a scripted thing or a pre-planned thing. It's just more or less of a result of how you built them
Mm-hmm.
and prior decisions. So it's a weird light metagaming sort of approach to it as well.
So that's not the only reason why I consider this to be one of my personal classics. Well, the core reason why I think it's a classic is the combat. It's the best turn-based combat I've seen in a fantasy RPG. Period. It's got the most interaction with the environment, and like any good game, you can absolutely break it. You can break it in ways that makes it so fun, so engaging to play each and every time. You look forward to combat encounters in this game because you always know you're gonna find some stupid way to absolutely get yourself killed by accident because you thought, oh, I'm gonna load my character with yeah, I have a character that has maximum strength, so I'm gonna load her up with like 10 barrels of oil, and then I'm just gonna throw them on the battlefield and then see what happens when somebody shoots at them with some fire. And if your PC doesn't crash, you will have probably killed one shot of the boss and your party and the entire map as well.
Nowadays it shouldn't freeze your computer. Back then, it's different.
Yeah, it's a thoroughly silly game. I'm not entirely sure what its story is. I started playing it it was in early access when you only had access to the first region of the game, and back then it had a sort of different-ish story. It was more about, oh, entropy has killed the universe, but yeah, you now have the chance to restore it while you're in the present, which is not the future from where the universe was destroyed by entropy. Now then it became something about a dragon, and then something about something else. It's like the high level plot sort of changed over time, and I think it got less silly over time. People didn't seem to be that much enamored with the silliness, to the point where they removed the cheese merchant in the definitive edition of it. So
Oh, okay.
in the first town that you visit, there's a guy that yells about cheese nonstop. That's all he
Yeah, I
does.
remember.
He yells about cheese, and he's standing next to a rooster who sells paintings.
Yeah.
So the chicken sells. Well, actually, I'm not sure if the chicken sells paintings, but there's a chicken there, and I think you can talk. You can talk to animals in the game.
Yeah,
It's a silly game.
there's a trait. It's a character trait, not even a spell, that allows you to talk to animals. And whilst you might think that's goofy, it's not. You can totally use it to solve quests.
Yeah,
Because, of course.
you can basically solve a murder quest a lot easier by talking to the
Nah,
dog.
Spoilers for like a 10-year-old game.
Yeah, you can talk to the dog of the person who got murdered. And the dog will tell you, oh, my master, oh, he was such a good person, but now he's dead. Anyway, these are the panties of whoever killed him. I'm not sure if that's how you get the panties, but you get panties as a clue, and I think you can wear them. You can wear a lot of silly stuff. You can put a bucket over your head, and you can use it as a helmet, but I think it drops your perception. You can also
Which makes sense, by the way. It should drop your fucking perception.
In the initial version, you could just drag and drop anything over everything, and it would, if there was a crafting recipe that wasn't at any time available to you, you just had to memorize it. If it worked, you'd get an item. You could add nails to your shoes, to any shoes, and you wouldn't slip on ice anymore.
I think that still exists in the game. I'm not sure.
But they made it with the recipes now, so you actually have a crafting interface in the current version.
I know, because that's the one I played, and I enjoy crafting in general. And this one had a good. I extra enjoyed the cooking. And those of you who don't know, I like to cook and I like to bake. And so first of all, it made sense because the food gives you buffs, which is basically free. They're free buffs, and you could make two of my favorite foods in history: French fries and pizza.
Yeah.
And you could bake, and you can obviously you can make bread and other stuff. But the fact that you could bake pizza and fries, and also eating them gave you, if I remember correctly, gave like, I don't know, a bit of resistance, or maybe some extra HP or recover or some shit like useful stuff. That was a special. That's what made me appreciate the game, like from a personal standpoint. Just like you said, and you kind of lost over this maybe a bit because maybe it's become like old hat to us. But you have to remember, at the time of release, the environmental interaction in the game was unprecedented.
Yeah. This game sort of is a sequel in spirit to Ultima 7. Ultima 7 had at its time, and possibly up until Divinity Original Sin, or at least until Dwarf Fortress, the highest level of interactivity in any game. You could, in Ultima 7, you could stack crates and climb on top of houses. And it was a 2D game. In this game, you can basically do the same. And you can also blow up the crates and kill yourself by accident.
A lot of stuff boils down to you doing your best not to blow yourself up in Original Sin.
It does a lot. The game has windows on houses that can be used. You can throw stuff through windows. You have a teleportation pyramid that you have two of them for each character, and you can just throw them willy-nilly and find yourself in different situations. The first time you use one, you wind up in somebody's bathroom while they're taking a bath.
In like a tub, which is odd, but
Yeah.
okay.
You have to excuse yourself. Oh, sorry. Don't mind us. We'll be leaving and taking the pyramid. Don't mind us. It's just so silly. I loved it. I didn't get a chance to finish it because I spent 40 hours playing the early access version, and then another 40 playing the full version, but never got around to actually finishing it. The last bit I played was when the poison area, poison swamp, not poison swamp, but there was an area with a lot of poisonous gas, which you had to find a way to go through. I tried blowing up the poisonous gas, and yeah, it killed me and everybody, and the map, and the PC crash, and everything.
Yeah, I think so. I would imagine that. I'd imagine they would imagine that would be the first thing people try anyway.
Yeah. I keep mentioning the explosions. The game had interactable elements in the sense that if you had a fire spell, it would cause ice to melt. If you had a freezing spell, it would make water freeze. If you had something that, if you had the fire spell on water, it would make steam. If you electrified the steam, it would shock everybody. You had so many interactions. It was at the level that I wished that Dragon Age 1 was, when they promised that they would have an interactive spell system. But this...
Yeah, I think they just meant like slightly interactive.
Yes, slightly. The Divinity Original Sin was so above slightly, it was amazing.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do was cast rain and then shock the water.
Yeah.
Because not for nothing, but electrocuting motherfuckers just made them dazed for the next turn, so you could just use the next. You got a free turn.
If there's a bunch of enemy archers in the distance, just set something on fire and there's smoke, and they're useless now.
Yeah, that was one of the. That's why I wanted to make sure we address the fact that it was quite the leap in interactivity with the environment in terms of RPGs, and that was I think that doesn't get as much praise as it maybe should.
Yeah, I think it absolutely should. Through this interactivity with its environment, it made every engagement. Well, firstly, you could set up your engagements. You could sneak around and place some crates and maybe lure some enemies into places where you had already set up some convenient battles of water if you knew you were fighting somebody that had a lot of fire on their hands, like actual fire. That's something that you can't do in a lot of games. One game that came out like a year or two before it, Wasteland 2, had combat engagements that in retrospect are so bad, with a combat system that is so boring that it just defies reality. I kept trying in that game to position my characters in a way that would be convenient to me when combat started, but every time combat started, they would move off the grid. I mean, out of the positions they were onto a grid. And it kind of sucked, because they never kept the exact position that I needed them to be in. Whereas in Original Sin, you had the freedom to take one character, have them sneak around somewhere, while another character was in combat. This character was moving freely in real time. This character was standing still because the enemy couldn't act until their turn ended. Again, abusable to hell on back. Also co-op, you could play it in co-op. It was beautiful. It was just insane and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And the sequel went more into the route of having a more Bioware style companion system, where you only had one character and they had a bunch of other characters, each of them with interesting stories, and you'd get to choose, I'm gonna get this one to be with me, and then this one, and maybe I'll leave that guy here and then take these two. That kind of always annoys me in RPGs. Why can't I take everybody? I mean, eventually I'm gonna find a mod that just lets me add everybody.
I don't know. For instance, I am of the peculiarity that I do not like parties bigger than 4 characters. For instance, especially in modern games, I'm not a big fan of a gigantic party. So this is another reason why Original Sin was something I liked, is because it limited you to 4 characters, 2 of which were your own.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's why, I don't know. I'm not a yeah. I remember playing Pillars of Eternity as well for a big while, and whilst I enjoyed the game, I did not like the clusterfuckness of all those characters doing their shit at the same time. Like that was I might feel about it differently now. I don't know. I haven't gotten to it. I might have to. I might get to it as well. But anyway, as we'll probably talk a little bit about it at the end of the video, I've pivoted my channel content over the last year. So yeah. But yeah,
So
Original Sin, cool.
yeah, absolutely superb game. Go play it. If you can try to get the non-definitive edition, I think you actually get it alongside the definitive edition.
Yeah, I think it comes with it.
Yeah, I kind of like that, especially in the crafting department in that game. It never told you could slap some nails onto your boots. The other one has a crafting interface. Well, it tells you can do that.
Yeah,
You feel like you're experimenting a bit more.
you also have to understand that like there's always the difference between making something real cool and making something that as many people can enjoy.
Oh yeah,
Those two things aren't necessarily, the Venn diagram, the crossover isn't necessarily that large, hence why introducing quality of life stuff like recipes makes sense from a wider appeal from a wider appeal perspective, and it doesn't really affect the gameplay experience per se. It's kind of like skins. Yeah.
that reminds me actually a bit. There was a bug in the release version of the game with a quest where you were supposed to talk to a lich. I think it was a lich or a ghost or something, and you had to prove that you are a learned individual, that you have read a book about the secret of life and death by some famous guy. And you find the book, and it's blank. It was actually a bug. It wasn't supposed to be blank. But the fact that it was blank initially was just, yeah, that's the secret. There isn't one.
It's like it's the Kung Fu Panda Dragon Warrior secrets. Like you open it and it's a reflection of yourself.
Yeah.
The real secret is the one we learn along the way.
Yeah. Well, that's it for my take on Original Sin. Go play it. What's up next?
Definitely. My next one is Banished from 2014.
Yeah.
Now, Banished is on my list, even though I don't play it anymore. But it is on my list for one massively important reason, is that it is the game that rekindled my love of city builder games. There was a period of time in my early days of gaming when I would play like city builders I'd play a lot of city builders. And for whatever reason, life, you go through phases as you develop as a human being and even afterwards. So I had a period of playing a lot of city builder games, just like I had a period of playing a lot of adventure point and clicks. That has an name. Anyway. So I played Banished in 2016, I think, if I remember correctly. And it truly rekindled my passion for city building games because it was so much more than I remembered from my past of playing city building games. It offered so much more immersive, real world situation-y sort of stuff to do and to deal with. And also it had something that I never knew I missed back in the Impressions games era, especially survival, the survival aspect. Winter was coming, you needed logs, you needed firewood, you needed food, you needed a bunch of stuff. And besides the presence of the survival features, which are right now, I'm gonna be honest, most city builders I play now, most new city builders I play now tend to be survival city builders. On the other hand, most city builders that are being made now are survival city builders. So besides that, it also had another crucially important difference from the Impressions games. And I know it might seem like I'm a motherfucking the Impressions games. I'm not. I'm just, what I'm saying is factual. Banished did not have the motherfucking walker system. So, which again, it's something. Once you learn how to deal with it, it's something that's. It's just it is what it is. That's just how should. But the idea is that not having that and seeing the people being sort of semi-simulated and creating tracks and paths and then roads through. I think I'm not sure if you built the roads or they built the roads. I know they made paths, but
I
I don't
think
know
you
if
can
you.
build roads to improve movement speed over what they normally make.
Yeah, so that would be something you would do. You'd basically just build a road along a path that you saw your peeps doing, and that was awesome. That was not something I had seen in the meanwhile. Granted, I I was lapsed. I hadn't played City Builders for a long time, but looking back, I still think Banished was like the cornerstone of the modern city building quasi renaissance. Which, if you remember,
Renaissance.
Renaissance. Sorry, Renaissance. Why am I pronouncing it Renaissance? Sometimes I'm weird. Sometimes I pronounce shit weird. Like, don't give me started on DeviantArt. You know how I pronounce that? For whatever the fuck reason, I pronounced DeviantArt as DeviantArt.
That actually sounds better, to be honest.
Maybe just because in my head it sounds like. Anyway, offshoot tangents. Back to Banished. If you remember, viewers, I used to tell Unicom in like our very first GameTales, which by now it's like, I think 5 years ago. I don't know how old they are, but I think they're around 5 years, maybe even more. I used to tell Unicom that city builders are coming back, and
And you
they
were
did
right.
come back quite a bit in the indie realm, mind you. You know, you won't see fucking Activision making
I mean, there's Anno 1800.
1800. Yeah, but again, first of all, fuck Ubisoft. But again, you won't see anything from Active or who the fuck makes Call of Duty and shit like that. Those big publishers aren't touching city builders.
Well, Electronic Arts touched it, and I think it went to hide in a corner after that because it touched in a bad place.
So yeah, Banished is on my list, even though I don't play it anymore, because, well, first of all, again, I don't want to come off like there's the Banished is still ongoing. By the way, it's made by one dude, so fascinating. Other cool things that you could move the windows around, which I know is a feature Unicom loves a lot. And to be honest, anyone, especially in a city builder, you kind of should be able to do that. It has an insanely large modding community, so the game still goes. But for a more casual player, there's other games. There's more recent games that were totally inspired by Banished, that do things a little bit differently, that do things a little bit maybe better, or that have a particular theme. And that was my main sort of critique of Banished, is that it's bland. There's no theme to it. There's no visual theme. There's no background story necessarily. There's no, and like, I understand if those aren't your shit, but those are my shit. and theme, especially in city builders, for me is super important. It has to be, and this is a thing that this is one of my weirdnesses. Is I love city builders, but I do not play any modern set city builders. I've never played Skylines. I've never had any interest in it. I could never get into SimCity either because it's modern. I don't care about. I can just go out or look out the window. I like historically set ones or sci-fi fantasy ones. Give me ogres and elves or you know much like the Impressions developer, the Impressions games. Give me ancient populations, or even blend the two. I don't know, fucking magic samurai or some shit. Um, but that's just on me. So that was why I left Banished behind, but it deserves my personal modern classics because it did rekindle my passion for city builders, and ever since 2016 I've been covering city builders constantly on my channel. And this past year 2022 I finished covering the major Impressions city builder games. I've almost done one. I've almost done one each year, but I think I had some lapse years. So right now on my channel you can find Caesar 3, Pharaoh, Children of the Nile, which technically not Impressions games per se, but
It's
it's
in the
made by
area.
it's made by people who worked at Impressions games and moved. Zeus and Poseidon, and Emperor Rise of the Middle Kingdom. So I finally covered all of them. I didn't play all of them back then. I'm glad I got to play them now. And it's thanks to Banished. And rest assured, I do have a modern city builder on my list. But we're gonna talk about that later on. I had to have Banished just because of its great impact on both myself as an enjoyer of games and on my channel content, basically.
My favorite memory of Banished is me thinking, "Oh, I got this. I know how it's gonna work. I prepared for the first winter to come. I got through it. Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's gonna be okay. This is gonna be no sweat." And then I realized my people are starting to die of old age, but there is nobody to replace them. And then the colony just died off because I didn't build houses for them to, multiply in. I didn't take that.
Yeah,
You don't take that into account with impression games.
yeah,
Or
you
with,
don't
with
think.
most city builders, actually. You don't take
Ye-
the death of your people into account.
yeah, well, they don't necessarily age. You have this weird sort of, which would be like disastrous. It would be like a population of immortals. No, that's it. A population of immortals that constantly reproduces. At a certain point, it's like a pyramid scheme. At a certain point, there's no more people to buy into your shit. At a certain point, they just eat up the entire planet and shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that was one of the things, one of the realistic touches that I was so happy to see in Banish. Plus, it also does disasters if you're into that sort of shit as well. Like I remember a tornado once through my yeah, it was not nice, it was not pretty.
Banished, a very good game. Again, made by a single person, which that's a lot. I mean, I sort of had on my list something similar, but I sort of moved it off because I forgot to add something else. It was Stardew Valley in my case. Also, a superb game, basically made by a single person as well, but not a survival game or a city builder in the sense of Banished. It's more of a casual, well, not exactly super casual, but a more chill fantasy about the unattainable concept of owning land.
Or home ownership, I think.
Oh my god, that's that's even less attainable.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I heard. Yeah, although I think these types of games, because there's a bunch of them, are sometimes also called like sort of farming sims, kinda. Not farming simulator. Not not agriculture simulator and shit, but in the sense that you, from what I understand, you plant stuff and
Yeah,
you harvest stuff, and then you also, you could say, you cultivate relationships.
yeah. I think you would like Stardew Valley because you can make pizza. There's an immense roster of recipes you can
Probably
try
because I
out.
really enjoyed. I played something similar called Forager.
Forage.
It
Oh yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
game is Forager, and I really enjoyed Forager as well because you kind of could do the same thing. You would, and the idea is that eventually it was kind of like light Factorio as well. Eventually you would have to get to automize, yeah,
Automate.
automate. Sorry, some of the processes and shit like that. But it was kind of like this. So I enjoyed playing that, but I realized it's either that and just that. And I kind of wanted to play other shit for my channel and for myself, to be honest. So that's why I stayed away from other things such as Stardew Valley or some other stuff, some similar stuff, because I've played Forager and I really enjoyed Forager, but I know it would just eat up my entire gaming time, and that's just not something I want for myself or my audience,
Yeah,
small as it
Stardew
is.
Valley would absolutely ruin your life in some ways. It has co-op as well, so it can ruin somebody else's life as
Mm.
well. Great game. But for my second personal classic, I'm picking Slay the Spire.
Mm.
If you don't know, Slay the Spire is a card game. It's what I had hoped that the Magic the Gathering series would get to at some point. My absolute favorite Magic the Gathering video game was the Chandelier game. Well, it was called just Magic the Gathering. It was made by Microprose in '96, I think, or something there. Sid Meier worked on it a bit before moving to Firaxis. It was basically, yeah, card game, Magic the Gathering, but you would actually move on the map. You'd have quests. You'd fight enemies. Everything had a point to it. You weren't just going from battle to battle to battle to battle with nothing there. You had dungeons to explore. In dungeons, you'd find rare cards and stuff like that. Nothing that good ever came out of Magic the Gathering again. Thankfully, in the indie scene, in the not affiliated with Wizards of the Coast, screw them scene, a large amount of deck builder games have come out, and I believe the pinnacle of them is Slay the Spire. You start off with one class. You have a bunch of classes that you can unlock. Even more if you go into the fan made mods, which there's a lot of. And you essentially you go into a dungeon. You climb a spire. Yeah, you climb up to it. Yeah, you climb to the top because in the fan made expansion you go down. You start from the bottom level. You get to choose your path, and you get to kill monsters using your cards. Each card is an attack or an ability or a defensive measurement, a buff, a debuff, and they synergize so well with artifacts that you also collect. It's a bit of a roguelike game as well. You die, you start a new run. You die, you start a new run. And each run is gonna be different. You're gonna find different cards. You're gonna unlock experience for your character that lets you unlock more cards. You can get new character classes. You can get new styles of play. And again, the artifacts really do change the game quite a lot. And I think there's about 100 of them, and some of them are just they can have a profound effect on how you can play it. I wouldn't say it's endless in terms of replayability because after 4 years, I think I've reached my fill of it for a while. But for 4 years, playing it basically daily was just a thing I did. I don't find that in a lot of card games or in a lot of games in general. That's something that this game had in spades. It had a variety to its gameplay that it's just maddening that Magic the Gathering, the game that has 10,000 cards, I believe at this point or something,
Oh, it has way more by now.
yeah, hasn't come up with something like that as a video game. If it did, it would have conquered the world because they had their mythos, they had everything apart from a good video game, a game that wasn't designed around the idea of selling you more card packs. You don't have card packs in this game. You just buy it once, and that's it. It's a card game that you buy once, it's yours forever. All the cards are in there. You don't pay extra for them. There is no multiplayer. There is no waiting for the enemy turn because the enemy forgot to press F2 because they changed the binding from F2 to something else at some point when they released a new version of Magic the Gathering Online, which I paid for 10 years ago, and I have played it twice because the interface sucks so much. It's just an astonishingly good deck building game. And a lot of them have come out in that vein. A lot of them. And I'm
deck builders were, I don't know if they still are, but again, I'm not very plugged into the indie scene anymore. But back then, deck builders were their own like sort of sub category, sub genre that would show up. I know I played and covered a fair few right along those lines of Slay the Spire, and none of them were bad, to be honest. They like mechanically, from a mechanic standpoint, they were it's a very difficult to ruin mechanic. The roguelike nature of card games, or the RNG nature of card games, plus the extra layer of RNG of new cards into your, it's kind of difficult to fuck that up. But yeah, as you say, Slay the Spire was just that perfect sort of combination of whatever to appeal to a larger audience than deck builders usually have. Much like how Darkest Dungeon appealed to a much wider audience. And if you look at the makeup, Darkest Dungeon, it's kind of like the same thing, more in large. Like you still get random stats and weapons, and that's a thing as well. That's a sort of subgenre as well. But I think this is, and they showed up kind of like in the same region of like the second half of the 2010s, when I don't know exactly, like we're gonna have to start looking back at it in a certain while, and so we can have hindsight, so we can see exactly why a lot of indie innovation and resurgences, resurrections, renaissances happened, of genres happened in that period, because a lot of them did. City builders being one of them, deck builders, the also the idea of this sort of infinity replayability roguelike concept with what was the really famous and Dead Cells. That was the one that again, in a couple of years we'll have to look back and see and understand why exactly, because we lived through it, I lived through it, and I can't really see exactly why or what was the driver behind that sort of innovation, because I'm not seeing it anymore. I'm seeing some cool stuff which is valid, but I'm not seeing that much innovation necessarily, or not even necessarily innovation, but new takes on older things. I'm not seeing it yet, or I'm not seeing it anymore. And this shit waxes and wanes.
It goes in waves. Yeah.
In general, life, humanity, whatever the fuck. But I'm really curious, what was it about the second half of the 2010s that kind of led to this? And if we're still alive in like 10 years and I'm still making videos, by then I'll probably have a better idea and actually make an analysis of why that happened. But yeah, that's something I There's something I've been with just this little bit of hindsight, looking back, you're like, huh, there was a lot of really cool indie stars hits in that period of time. Anyway, I interrupted.
Oh, that would be about actually what I have to say about Slay the Spire. Oh, there's a fan-made expansion for it that adds a new class, the Gunslinger. Initially, you have 4 classes. One of them is hidden. You have to finish the game with all the previous characters to unlock this one. You get the Gunslinger, and you also get the ability to play as all of the bosses. Each boss has its own different mechanic of playing the game. They all still use cards, but they use them differently, and they have
Which is really cool.
Yeah, the fact that people love the game so much to essentially make another game on top of it is just something beautiful to behold. And as playing against the boss, you go down to beat up the hero. And normally, monsters just use attacks. And you can see if they're gonna attack, if they're gonna do a debuff, buff, something like that. The heroes, you can see their hand with their cards. And that's so funny because you can actually see them drawing cards and using cards, and you can sort of understand what they're gonna do. That's
cool.
That's something that the fans made. There wasn't a mechanic in the game. In the game, the enemies don't have cards.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. And it still is. Go play it.